Well, we are continuing with the book of daily abundance, increase, abundance, overflow, and more than enough. And we're on day number 15, which is page 24 in your book. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you've got your book out with you today. Our subject today is that we're talking about a natural or a human birthright. Our scripture is Proverbs chapter 13 and verse number 22. It says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That's Proverbs 13 and 22. And our affirmations, I receive all the good that my ancestors have passed on to me. I receive all the good that my ancestors have passed on to me. Well, when we talk about generations and ancestors, it brings up a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But I know that we have received things from previous generations, that you didn't just wake up like this, that there were things that were passed on to you, some consciously, some unconsciously, some things you learned actively, some things you learned passively or vicariously from your parents, from your grandparents, from your great-grandparents. I was blessed at one time in my family to have 5 generations alive, where I knew my great-great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mom, and me. We had all 5 generations that were alive at one time. And so there were things that were passed on to me. There are things that are passed on to you as a result of our ancestors, our forefathers, and our foremothers. And so that is the idea of birthright. If there's something that is passed on to you from previous generations, and just by virtue of you being born into that family, there are certain things that are passed on to you. It's like grace. It's unmerited favor. It's nothing you did to deserve it. You didn't earn it. You didn't work for it. It was just passed on to you as a result of you being born in that particular family. And we call that a human birthright. I often use the royal family in England to help people understand the natural or the human birthright. That just by virtue of them being born into the royal family, they automatically have a lineage to be able to be in leadership, to be able to rule, to be able to reign, that they are entitled to certain privileges, family heirlooms, all these things that they get just because they were born into the royal family. They're called Prince so-and-so or Princess so-and-so because they were born into the royal family. They are born with having servants and people wait on them and having the best food, the best clothes, being able to do worldwide travel, that just by virtue of being born into the royal family, they got a certain amount of media attention that is on them when they are born, that their names and what they're going to be called. There's a lot of emphasis that is put on the royal family. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if the royal family helps you understand what I mean when I say a natural birthright, that they are born into a royal family. They didn't do anything but make it through the birth canal. And as a result of that, they are entitled to certain rights and privileges. Certain doors are open for them. Certain opportunities are afforded to them just because of what their last name is, just because of the family they were born into. And so it doesn't just work for the royal family. It works for all families, that there is a human, there is a natural birthright that we receive from the families that we chose to be born in. And that's right, I said the family that we chose to be born in. All right, so pulley point number 1 is physical. There are some physical things that are passed on to you as a part of your human birthright. It could be physical features where people in a particular family, they have particular features like these eyebrows, these thick eyebrows. They have been passed on to me. That's a part of my human birthright, that you can tell the Thompsons by the thick eyebrows. That's one of the birthrights that have been passed, the physical features. And it's not just physical features, but it's also physical challenges that from the Pulley family. There were a lot of my dad, my grandfather, his father, they had a predisposition. I was passed on a predisposition to alcohol. I mean, they drank. Amen. They drank. My father transitioned from cirrhosis of the liver. So because of that predisposition, they didn't pass on to me being an alcoholic, but they passed on to me that idea of alcoholism, that is a part. I have a predisposition where I made up my mind as a child that I was not going to drink because I saw what it did to my father. I saw what it did to my grandfather. So I made a decision very early on. I remember pouring out my father's vodka and pouring water in the bottle because I didn't desire him to drink, because I saw what drinking did to him. So I made up in my mind that when I grow up, I'm not going to drink because of the predisposition of the physical birthright that was passed on to me. Pulley point number one is a physical birthright. There are physical features, there are predispositions, there are physical challenges. Maybe people from my mother's side of the family, there were people that had heart conditions and heart challenges. Does that mean that I'm going to have heart disease? Does that mean I'm going to die of a heart attack or a stroke? No, but that means that I need to be careful, and I need to make sure that I'm taking good care of my heart, because there were things that were passed on to me from the previous generation. I don't believe in generational curses that because they had it, you're automatically going to have it. I don't believe that, but I do believe that there is a predisposition that we are passed on 23 chromosomes from our mothers and 23 chromosomes from our fathers. And just like we get a physique, we get a physical manifestation of looking like people in our families, I believe there's some internal things that are passed on to us as well. And as a result of that, we can decide what we're going to do with it. I believe that we have a choice, and I can decide to drink or not drink as a result of that predisposition. So it doesn't mean that automatically you're going to get the diseases that they had, or automatically you're going to do the things that they did, but it says that you need to watch out for that. You need to pay attention to that. Obesity runs in my family, where people are morbidly obese. So I grew up teaching my children about exercise, and that's why I'm an avid person that exercise. I exercise every day. I find some form of exercise. I tell people being obese is against my religion, because I watched the obesity that ran in my family, and I saw what it did to them and the impact that it had on them. So I made a decision, because I know that if I don't exercise, that I can become obese. So it doesn't mean I'm automatically going to be obese because people in my family were obese, but it does mean that there's a predisposition. There are things that they passed on to me that I need to be careful about physically because of my human or because of my natural birthright. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you are aware of that, if you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying you automatically going to get it. I'm not saying that your choice has been stripped from you, but I'm saying that there are things that you need to watch out for and pay attention to as a result of your family of origin. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart. All right? Pulley point number two. There are also some soulful things, ways of thinking, ways of feeling, or patterns of intelligence and learning. There are also decisions that have been made from my family of origin that have been passed on to me. Like some people feel like with mental health, that there's a stigma in the African American community about mental health. Well, my family didn't pass on that stigma. My mom was a counselor, and there are counselors and mental health professionals in my family. So I didn't grow up with a stigma that there was something wrong with going to get counseling, or there was something wrong with taking care of your mental health, just like you take care of your physical health. I was taught it was a good thing. So I became a therapist. And when I needed help, when my first wife transitioned, when Brittany and Courtney's mom transitioned, I went to counseling, because in my family, they passed on to me as a part of my birthright that if you in trouble and you got some stuff going on, go talk to somebody. Don't try to take it on yourself. So that's something they passed on to me, that it was okay to go to counseling. It was okay to take care of your mental health. I remember my mom every single solitary day before I went to school. She hugged me. She told me she loved me. She told me I was handsome, that I was intelligent, and I could do anything in this earth that I desired to do. My mother told me that every single solitary day that I woke up and went to school. She told me I was handsome, I was intelligent, that I could do anything that I put my mind to, and that she loved me, and she would give me a hug and a kiss every single solitary day. So it passed on to me being affectionate. I'm a touchy-feely, loving, warm person, where some people, they didn't get those hugs. They weren't told by their family members that they love them. So that might be something strange for them. They might be a little standoffish, or they don't want you to touch them. But I was raised with touch. I was raised with physical words of affirmation that built up my soul. I believe it built up my ability to be able to believe in myself. It built up my self-esteem. So can you imagine every day being told that you're loved and you're handsome and you're intelligent and you can do whatever you put your mind to? I passed it on to my children. So when I was a parent, I had little daddy bags, and I would write positive affirmations to my children every day on their lunch bag, on that brown paper bag. I would write a positive affirmation when I made their lunch, and I passed that on to them. I told them, Brittany and Courtney, I said, you're my beautiful, intelligent daughters, and you can do whatever you put your mind to. I told my son, I said, your father's a king, your mother's a queen, and you are a prince. And so that was passed on to me, of those positive affirmations. So I passed it on as a part of a birthright, as a part of a soulful birthright. I passed that on to my children. And I have a granddaughter, Tyler Jade, and her mother's passing that on to her. That there's something that is to be passed on, that's a birthright, that is passed on to the family. And so, pulley point number one, if there's a physical birthright that's passed on to you from your family. Pulley point number two, there's a soulful birthright that's passed on that builds and shapes how you see life, how you see people. I was not raised with prejudice and discrimination. I was taught to love all people. My mother loved all people, white people, brown people, black people. I was taught to love everybody, and I passed that on to my children. Love God, love yourself, love everybody else. And everybody is different, but everybody is to be worthy of love and respect. You don't have to agree with everything people do, but you are to love them and you are to respect them. I grew up with that, so I passed that on to my children, and they're passing that on to my granddaughter. And so I'm causing you to think about, what are the things that physically have been passed on to you? That some things you can't do anything about, they're your physical features, and some things you got to look out for. Think about it. What are the soulful things that have been passed on to you from your family that make you, that have helped shape your personality, that help shape who you are? My daughter, Brittany, she's becoming a therapist again. My mother was a counselor. I was a counselor. Brittany is becoming a counselor. And she passed her national counselor's exam Friday, I believe it was, or Thursday. And she passed it on the first go round. And so I put on there, pulleys passed the first time around. I've convinced them that just by virtue of them being a pulley and them having pulley blood in them, that they are automatically intelligent and that they can do things the first time. They don't have to struggle with achievement and success, that it's an automatic part of who they are. What are you passing on to the next generation? What has been passed on to you? So think about it in a physical way, think about it in a soulful way, and also, pulley point number three, in a spiritual way. There's certain things that are passed on to us spiritually. I was taught before you go to bed at night, you say your prayers. Everybody didn't grow up like that. But I was brought up with saying my prayers before I went to bed at night. Now I'll lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord. That was something we had to do every night before I went to bed. Now, I pass it on to my children. So we sang the Lord's Prayer every night. Yes, we sang the Lord's Prayer. It wasn't the exact same thing, but I knew that my kids needed to pray when they went to bed at night. I knew they were to pray when they woke up in the morning. I taught them to bless their food. See, we take these things for granted, but somebody taught you that. You got that from somewhere. Every family doesn't teach you to pray before you go to bed at night or to bless your food. You better not dare dare take a morsel of food until you say your grace, until you thank God for the food. That's something spiritually that was passed on to me. That was passed on to me that we go to church. That we are a church-going family. Our family started churches. We go to church. That's something that we do. And not hit and miss church, but every Sunday you go to church. That was something that was passed on to me as a part of my natural birthright of the family that I was born into. I was taught that you don't watch TV and eat food, that the family sits around the dinner table. It was a part of a spiritual communion that we were taught, that communion is not just the body and the blood of Jesus, but it's also sitting around the table and eating together and saying how your day was. I was raised that way. I was taught that way. So I taught my children the same way. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about a physical thing that there was never salt and pepper. And I know this sounds funny, but I'm just trying to show you how things are passed on to us. We never had salt shakers or pepper shakers on our tables. We were taught that you season the food while you're cooking it. And if you need to season it afterwards, then it's not good. So I wasn't raised with salt and pepper shakers on my table. I didn't raise my children with salt and pepper shakers on their table. So when they went to other people's houses and they had salt, they said, "What is that? What are those things that you have?" And they said, "There's salt and pepper." They said, "Why do you what do you need that for? You don't put seasoning in the food when you make it." It was just passed on to them. And so I learned that because of hypertension that ran our family, that we didn't add salt to our food. I didn't know why we didn't have salt and pepper shakers on the table, but there are things that we're passing on. And so since there are things that you're passing on to the next generation physically, pay attention to that. Because there are things that you're passing on to the next generation soulfully. Pay attention to that. Because there are things that you're passing on to the next generation spiritually. Pay attention to it. Be conscious of what you have received from your family and what you are passing on to the next generation. The scripture says, a good man, a good woman leaves an inheritance for their children's children. When you start thinking about abundance, when you start thinking about prosperity, think about the third generational blessing, that you are passing on something to the third generation. One of the things that I decided to do, and I've written, I think, about 4 or 5 books and maybe 12 devotionals. And when I set up my royalties for these books, because these books are going to go on generation, I put Tyler Jade on for the royalties. That I put her social security number so that when I transition and I go into the next dimension of life, that she will always benefit from the books that I have written, that I'm passing on the blessing. And Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body that's passed on. And I believe that we can pass on the blessings, that we can build generational wealth, that we can pass on to the next generation. And so Tyler's already, just because she was born to the family, there's already wealth that is set up for her because her grandfather is an author. There are benefits that she's going to have, that some people may have more or some people may have less. But I'm conscious, what am I leaving for the next generation? Don't spend up everything. Save up something for the next generation. Their college fund. When Brittany and Courtney got married, there was money. Well, Courtney hasn't gotten married yet, but when Brittany got married, there was money that was there for that because it was saved up. It was passed on. What are you passing on to the next generation? That is a prosperity consciousness, that you think about the next generation and the generation after that, that you don't eat up all your money, that you don't wear all your money, that you don't drive all your money. Even when you buy houses, that you think about, this is a house, I'm not just going to pay rent, but I'm going to buy a house. You say, well, I need to buy a house so I can pass it on to the next generation, that they can start out ahead, that they can start out with something as opposed to starting in debt. And so as we are working on our daily abundance, on our prosperity consciousness, what are the family heirlooms? If you're going to buy jewelry, what is the worth? What is the value of it? That it can be passed on to the next generation. And so I'm talking today about a human birthright that you have. that has been passed on to you from previous generations. So thank God for your ancestors. Thank God for your forefathers and your foremothers. Thank God for your grandparents and your great-grandparents from both sides of the family. And be conscious of what has been passed on to you and what you will pass on to somebody else.